Hello, good evening, everybody. Well, good evening for those of you that it is evening. It's evening here for us. My name is Becky. I'm here from Immersify Education, and I'm going to be running you through the webinar today. If you are joining late or watching this back a little bit later on, don't worry, you can kind of rewind and go back to the beginning, catch up on anything that you want. So I'm going to kind of jump right into it. Today we're going to be having our Revision 101 webinar. We're going to be focusing on revising smarter, not harder. How can we make better use of our time rather than just kind of studying and loads and loads and loads and hoping for the best. Today I'm joined by Peter Rees, who is a dental student at the University of Liverpool. Ruby Long, a clinical lecturer in restorative dentistry from the University of Cardiff, and Ghada Jassim, who is a dental student from the University of Sharjah. I'm going to introduce you to them a little bit later on, and they're going to talk to you a little bit more. So I'm going to move on to the next slide first. So throughout the webinar, you can expect to hear a little bit more about us, who we are at Immersify Education and the Immersify platform, what we offer there, how it's helpful, how it can help you in your revision, things like that. We're going to go through some top tips for thriving in university from our guest speakers, who I just mentioned. And we're going to talk about a little bit more in detail about the resources that we have to offer for you and how they can fit seamlessly into your revision plans, how they can support you in exam season, and how they can support you even beyond that into graduation and the workplace further ahead. Then at the end, we're going to show you a little preview of some of our new perio content. This is completely unreleased. We haven't shared this with anybody yet. And this is going to be going into the Immersify platform next week. So it's going to be very exciting. And then at the end, I'll give you a little bit more information on things like how you can get your CPD certificates, how you can claim your For All Things Dentistry planners that have been created in collaboration with us. So I'll give you a little bit more information at the end about how you can claim those. We're going to try really hard to stick to 1 hour. We don't want to keep up your whole night, but also we don't want to rush and miss out anything that you might want to hear about. So we may run a little bit over. If you have to leave at any point, that's absolutely fine. You can always come back and watch the rest using the same link that you've joined with now. But please do be aware that to claim your CPD hour, you will have to have watched and kind of engaged with the entire webinar. So just something to keep in mind. So let's start with who are Immersify Education. I'm imagining that many of you will have already heard of us if you're here now, but if you haven't, that's absolutely fine. I will tell you a bit more about us. We are an ed tech company. We're based in the north of England. We're in Manchester. And we are a group of people who are really passionate about education, technology, creating accessible resources, and really kind of bridging this gap between practical and theory. We see often that a lot of resources can really focus on theory or really focus on practical, and sometimes there can be a little bit of a divide between the two. So our kind of specialty is bridging that gap, bringing the two together, making content that is enjoyable, it's interactive, it's kind of the whole package. So that's who we are. And between us, we have created the Immersify platform. So, oh, lovely, my video's not working. That's great. Oops. Okay, we're going to pretend that my video is working there. And if you want to see the Immersify platform, there are links in the description box of this video, so you can give it a go yourself properly there. But essentially, the Immersify platform, we have our resources are hosted both on the web and on the app. So if you're on the web, you can search for immersifyplatform.com, or if you're in the App Store or Google Play, you can search for Immersify Dental, and that is where you can find all of our lovely content. You might be listening to that and saying, okay, well, what is the content? So we offer resources to help the modern student through university and beyond. And we do that with things like MCQs, VMCQs. We have lessons on there. The lessons come with end of lesson quizzes. We have what we call our experiences. So these are things that really allow you to become very immersed in the content and really get that kind of like real life experience that you can't get outside of the clinic. So for instance, we have a LA experience that was created in collaboration with SEPTODONT. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that later. And that experience allows you to practice administering local anesthetic, obviously outside of the clinic. And that does so by using 3D models. You'll see a little picture of it later, so I won't talk to you about it too much, but that's just kind of an example of what the Immersify experiences are. So essentially, they're just things that really help you fine-tune those practical skills from wherever you are in the world. Anywhere that you have an internet connection, you can use the Immersify platform. So you can really, take it with you on the go if you're going on holiday and you don't want to carry too many things with you. It's perfect. You have it on your phone, you have it on a laptop, you can take it with you. We also work very closely with experts within the dental industry to make sure that all of our lessons, all of our MCQs, quizzes, whatever it is in there, are written by experts to make sure that they're really reliable. What we really don't want you to be doing is having to search for content online if there's a topic that you're struggling with, and then not know how reliable that is. This is something that was really important to us, was to be able to create reliable resources that you really know you can trust, you can rely on. How many times can I say reliable there? But it's that kind of idea. So they're always written by experts, they're quality assured by experts, they're quality assured again, to make sure that by the time it gets to you, we're confident that it is really correct information that you can use. And then we also have our community section where you can connect with your peers, you can get advice on things like applying to dental school, getting your first job, studying in general, things like that. And our challenges section where you can compete with your peers, you can play all sorts of different experiences. So our experiences, some of our MCQs, things like that are in there. You can earn crowns to unlock the next level. You can get a new high score to get on the leaderboard, things like that. And I don't think this is something that we have quite announced yet, but very soon we will also be releasing some simulations. So I can't tell you too much about those, but I can tell you to keep an eye out, and they will be there soon. Currently within the Immersify platform, we are covering 29 different dental topics, but new content is added to the platform each month, and very soon we will have more and more topics coming. So again, keep your eye out on that for that, because there are some things coming very, very soon. And then next, we're going to hear from Ruby Long from Cardiff University, as I mentioned earlier. So Ruby is a clinical lecturer in restorative dentistry and is currently conducting research to help better understand, get a better idea of how students can take care of their mental health and build resilience when they're in university. So today she's going to share with you some tips about how you can do that. So I'm going to add Ruby in and let her pop her presentation on.
Hello, everybody. I'm just going to get my presentation up. There we go. Lovely. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Becky. So yeah, my name is Ruby. I am a clinical lecturer at Cardiff University here in the UK. I've been doing this job for around 18 months and have recently started a PhD looking at the resilience of our students in oral health education programmes. This is something that I could talk about for ever and a day, but I've only got 10 minutes. So it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and we'll hopefully give you a few tips for getting through dental school. So first of all, what is resilience? And there's loads and loads of different definitions out there, but I think the most simple and easy to understand is it's the ability to bounce back following adversity. So what is adversity? I guess when we're talking about dental school, it could be anything that makes us stressed. So failing an exam, or not doing as well as we thought we were going to do in exams, or struggling to pick up a practical skill, or having some negative feedback from a patient or a supervisor. And our resilience is really about how we use that experience to make it positive or to come back stronger. So I just want to first kind of say that dental school is really difficult, and anyone who says it's not is a liar. It is hard. You have to learn so much content alongside learning communication skills and learning tricky practical skills as well. And it's not a smooth ride for anybody. It's very normal for you to feel stressed and for you to kind of hit bumps in the road. So because of that, we all need to be resilient, okay, and we need to be able to sort of get through these difficult times. But the good news is that you can build and maintain your resilience, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. Okay, so the first thing that you can kind of do to help with this is to take control. And by that, I mean to take control of kind of your progression through dental school and your ability to get through the course. So in order to do this, I guess the first thing and one of the most important things is about time management. So plan your time properly. At the beginning of the year, it's important to make sure that you know where your exams are, when you're going to need to revise for things, when the hand-in dates are for important assignments. If you do this, then it means you're not going to be surprised by anything. So I guess that's a top tip. Don't be surprised by anything. Don't let it creep up on you. Make sure you give yourself a fighting chance to get through the more difficult exams. And that kind of moves on to you knowing what is expected of you. So most universities, they publish their learning outcomes, and the learning outcomes are what we expect you to know by the end of the course. So to let you in on a little secret, that's what we use when we're writing exam questions. So if you can look through all the learning outcomes within a topic and you know them all and you think you can do them all, then you'll be fine. So if there's areas where you think you're struggling, or there's learning outcomes which you're finding more difficult, those are the ones you need to focus on. So the next thing I want to talk about is reflection. So I've kind of already mentioned that you will hit bumps in the road, things will be difficult, you will find some things more difficult than others. And it's important not to just kind of brush over those things or push them under the rug or forget about them. When something doesn't go to plan, you want to try and reflect on it and explore the reasons maybe why it didn't go to plan. Was there something else that you could have done? Was there something that the people around you could have done that would have made things easier? And then based on this reflection, you can think about making action plans. So what can you do which means that this won't happen again? So when something goes wrong, it's important to reflect on it and then to take control of it and make a plan for how that's not going to happen again in the future. So the next thing I want to kind of mention is about making connections with your school and the community around you, because that can really help you to be more resilient when something goes wrong. So first of all, you need to look into the support that's offered by your schools, and you'd probably be surprised at how much is kind of out there and how much the university is offering you. Just from kind of personal experience at Cardiff, we've got personal tutors, we've got student mentors, we've got student societies. There's all sorts of things out there that can support you. So take advantage of them and make sure that you know who they are and where they are and what kind of support they can offer you. The next people that you can turn to are your colleagues. So your students in your year, those in the year above you, those in the year below you. So you're all going through the same things. You're probably all facing similar problems, and your colleagues can be an excellent sort of source of support. But one sort of caveat that I would have to that is try not to compare yourself to others. So there are some things that some students will find more difficult and some students will find more simple, and those things tend to balance themselves out as you go along. So try not to compare yourself to your colleagues because if you feel like it's just you that can't do something, that's probably not true, and the rest, the other half of your year that you haven't spoken to are actually finding it really difficult. So it's great that if you know who the people are to turn to when you're struggling, but you also need to kind of make use of that. So raise concerns appropriately. And this means that you need to identify when there's an issue and raise it with the right person. So just as an example, if you're going through a particularly difficult time and for some reason you think you're not going to be able to hand in an assignment, don't wait until you've already missed the deadline to let somebody know. So reach out and sort of notify the correct people and seek the right support at the right time. And that's really important. So the next thing that helps with your resilience is your life outside of dental school. Okay, so don't forget your life outside of dental school or your life before dental school. Try and find something that helps you to switch off. And that's different for everybody. It might be yoga or knitting or swimming or drawing. It really doesn't matter. But you want to try and find something that you can do and you don't think about dentistry when you're doing it. And so about a year ago, I started doing pottery, and I just do it for an hour a week. But when I do it, I don't think about anything else, and I always leave feeling much more relaxed. And this kind of leads on to not letting your studies take over your life. I appreciate there will be times during the academic year when, revision really does take over your life, and that's okay, but it shouldn't be all the time. So, when there is downtime, make sure that you've got a hobby or some, whatever it is that helps you to relax, make sure that you've got time for that. And then finally, don't forget your sort of friends and family outside of dental school. So your friends across the rest of the university who might be on different courses or who you knew before you started university, and your friends at home, because there are times when you'll really appreciate having somebody to talk to that's not a dentist, who can kind of give you that different perspective outside of the dental world. And finally, it's important not to overlook kind of looking after yourself and looking after your general health. If you're not physically well, then there's no way that you're going to be mentally well. Okay, and these things might seem quite obvious, but you'd be surprised how often we find that students aren't looking after themselves. So with regards to nutrition, we all know we need to eat properly and we need to eat healthily. But I find, so I'm a clinical lead for the years 1 and 2. And we find that when students first start clinics, we get lots of students having to, go home because they've got headaches or fainting or struggling to get through the day. And then the more you investigate this, you kind of realize that actually they haven't eaten breakfast or they haven't eaten lunch. And you'd be surprised what a big difference that can make. A day at dental school can be from 8:30 or 5:30. So it's really important that you fuel yourself properly for a full day of, you might be on your feet all day or using your brain all day. So make sure that you've fueled properly for that. And then exercise. Exercise is a great way to switch off, and it might be what you do to switch off. But if it's not, then make sure you're getting exercise at some other point. Just as one example, as dentists, we're probably going to spend most of our lives sat down. It's not particularly good for our backs. So we need to make sure we're keeping our back strong so that we can keep doing our job, and that's less of a source of stress for us. And then finally, sleep and recovery are super important. So the way that we recover, I think, is equally as important as how hard we work. If you're not well rested and you're not well recovered, then you're not going to work efficiently. And, sleep is different for everyone. Some people need 10 hours of sleep a day. Some people need 5 hours sleep. And it doesn't really matter, but find out what you need and make sure that you're getting it and try to get that in, regularly. And research does show that sleep should be consistent. Try and go to bed at the same time every night and just generally look after yourself. Okay, so thank you so much for listening. That's just a picture of my 2 little dogs who haven't run in this evening, luckily, and they help me to switch off and relax, and they definitely contribute to my resilience. Yeah, so great. Thank you for listening. I think we've got some time for any questions if anybody's got any. Is that right, Becky?
Sorry, yes, we do have time for questions if anybody has any questions. give it a second. I think there's a slight delay on them coming through, so we'll just have to give them a second. The dogs are very, very cute, Ruby, and I must say that I'm actually disappointed they haven't come to say hello. So
it's Wilf and Margot, and it's actually Wilf's birthday today. He's the grey one at the back.
Oh, how lovely. Are you doing anything nice for your birthday?
No, it's terrible weather, so he's hiding from the thunder.
Fair enough. We've all been there. Okay, we have a question here come through for you, Ruby. A question that has been swarming around in my head is it worth all of the work and the breakdowns?
Yes, definitely. I think it's completely normal, and I have students coming to me all the time that saying, like, I'm finding something really difficult. Is that normal? Like, is it supposed to be hard? Should I keep going? Am I going to be any good at dentistry? And I always just say, like, this is completely normal, but it is definitely worth it, and I wouldn't change anything. So keep going.
It's really lovely. I'm sure there's lots of people that needed to hear that. So it's a very good question. Give it a couple more minutes, see if any more come through. If not, just let everybody know any questions that you do leave in the comments that we might not have time to answer or anything like that. We will kind of come back to you later, and we'll be sending a follow-up email, so we'll pop any in there as well. We have a question here as well from Jana. Are there any sites you recommend, because I'm a visual learner and I can't find that many resources? Before I let Ruby take this one, I am going to have to interject here to say that the Immersify platform does have lots of visual resources. So we feel it's my job to plug that one there.
Yeah, I think you're taking the words out of my mouth, Becky. I think Immersify's got some amazing visual resources. I like visual stuff as well, and it has got some really, really good stuff. So yeah, have a little look and see what you can find.
Amazing, thank you. I mean, definitely take that one. We'll take that as a win there. We have one more. Was there ever any point in times when you were studying that you felt like maybe this isn't the right thing for you?
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like that some days now. And sometimes I'm doing my PhD and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Am I doing the wrong thing? But I think anything that's worth doing is a challenge. And I think one thing that we as a profession maybe, and I think it's the same for medicine, I think it's the same for all the medical professions, is we're not very good at admitting that something's really hard, and it's hard for everybody. But generally, the types of people that end up going into these professions are people who are good at pretending it's not hard. So I think, I think everybody has those moments, and that's, it's completely normal. And like I say, I still get them now.
I think it's human. I think everybody at any point of their career probably spends a lot of time thinking, is this right? The same viewer has said, I feel like it's the stress, and I'm starting to feel like I really dislike it. And thank you for your answer.
I think what I would say back to that is just make sure that you find the resources available in your university. I often find that students sort of come to me with issues, but they don't even know of some of the resources and things that are available to them. So, ask your tutors, find out what is out there, because universities invest a lot of money and time into resources for students, but sometimes they're not very well utilized. So if you are struggling, look for those resources and take advantage of them.
That's really nice advice. And we've had one other person say, thank you for the amazing advice.
No problem.
Lovely. Okay, so yeah, if you have any more questions for Ruby, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and we can get to them later, but we are going to need to move on now. I just don't want things to get too behind. So thank you so much for all of the amazing advice and your lovely presentation, Ruby.
Thank you for having me.
Gonna let you come off the screen now. Okay, So the next speaker we're going to be hearing from is Pete Rees. Pete is a dental student at the University of Liverpool and has previously worked in the NHS as a specialist cardiac, I hope I'm going to say this right, physiologist. And so something that we here at Immersify know is that LA can be like a really tricky topic for many people, which is precisely why we've spent so much time creating a topic dedicated to LA specifically. And we also teamed up with SEPTODONT to create our LA experience that I mentioned a little bit earlier. For those of you who might not know, SEPTODONT are a company who are focused on enhancing people's lives by creating innovative, safe, and effective healthcare solutions and pain management solutions. So there is a link to the, wow, my words are not working there. There is a link to their website in the description box if you do want to learn anything more about SEPTODONT. You can find that there and you can check out their website. And in the meantime, Pete is going to talk to you a little bit about some of his top tips for learning LA. So I'm going to add him in. Welcome.
Hi, Becky. Thanks for your introduction there. Thanks also to Ruby as well. That was really helpful advice. I'm just going to try and share my screen as best I can. Sorry, this is... 1 second. Can I just make sure that you can see this? Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, and I'll let you see.
Amazing. All right. Well, hello, everyone. So I'm not as adverse to presenting as Ruby is, I think, and so I'm probably not going to be as eloquent as she might be. But I'll for sure try and give it a go. I'm also wouldn't class myself an expert in anything really, but I have learned some tips over giving local anesthetic for the last sort of 4 years, and I'm happy to share those with everyone. Perhaps all the advice I give you might not be textbook, which might not be great for everyone, but it's stuff that's helped me and it works for me. So we'll go with it and hopefully it helps you at some point as well. So the things we're going to talk about really are, I'm a firm believer in preparation. So I think the thing you do beforehand, and if you prepare yourself in any situation for anything, as Ruby was saying as well, that sort of sets you up for success. If you're underprepared, especially if you're underprepared and nervous, it just, it's a self-perpetuating situation where things just go from bad to worse. So the more you can do to prepare yourself before ever giving local anesthetic, the better off you'll be. And then we'll talk about some tips and tricks that I've learned either from tutors or by watching things or doing things that I think are really helpful in giving local anesthetic for yourself and for the patient. Okay, so with regards to preparation, there's sort of 3 prongs I would always have in my mind with regards to giving local anesthetic, and those are, do I need it? Can I give it? And will it work? And so this arrow here is a sort of a representation of an increased indication for local anesthetic. But you may find that you could get quite far down this list before ever needing to give local anesthetic. So it's important not to have built up in your head that you're definitely going to give it local anesthetic, and before the patient even walks through the door, you've stood with a needle in one hand, shaking and shivering, thinking this is going to be petrifying, because it may be that you don't even need to give it. You could probably find that, well, not a lot of restoration, but there are certainly restorations you could do that you'd never need even give local anesthetic for. So it's really important to make sure that you know that you need to give it before you ever work yourself up about doing so. Next, the question is, can you give it? Are there any reasons, relative or absolute contraindications, as to why you shouldn't give local anesthetic? And it's really important to, this just really emphasizes the point of checking medical histories, checking things over with patients, checking that nothing's changed since you last saw them, before even considering giving local anesthetic, because finding this stuff out beforehand will really it'll help you in your preparation to know that you can, okay, you do need it and you now can give it. The next thing I would say is, will it work? Are there any reasons why this isn't going to work? Have you not given enough? Have you given it in the wrong place? Is there a huge degree of inflammation in the tissues that means that even if you do need it and you can give it, it's not going to work? For example, if you have a patient who presents with a massive buccal abscess secondary to caries in a lower left molar, you may need local anesthetic and you probably can give it, but it's not going to work because there's such a large degree of inflammation there. So it's really important to ask yourself these questions before ever considering giving local anesthetic. Okay, so you've decided you do need it, you can give it, and it's going to work. Now you need to set up your equipment. Now I'm really torn when I made this slide. I think this is probably more for people who are just starting out and just giving LA for the first time. When you set up your equipment as the operator, if you're the one who's going to give that anesthetic and you're going to give that injection, you really need to make sure that what you're giving is what you think you're giving, what you think you're giving rather. And it's really helpful to have somebody to set up for you. And many experienced clinicians will have a brilliant nurse or a brilliant assistant who will set things up for them. But while you're the one who has to give the local anesthetic, you really need to make sure that if anything was wrong with that local anesthetic, that you knew, or that you don't give it, for that example. And I think it's important then that while you're starting out and you're building confidence in giving local anesthetic, that you really take the responsibility of setting up your equipment so that you know that everything you do is right. For an example, when I used to work in cardiac physiology, we used to make heparinized saline bags. And these lines used to be connected to patients undergoing angiography, and the cardiologist would always be the one who gave the line between the patient, but it would be my job to set the bag up. Now, when it came to me and I had to take a vial of heparin and inject it into a saline bag, I would never do so without checking that, first of all, it was the right medication. It said what I wanted it to say on it. It was in the right concentration. It was in date. There was nothing wrong. The vial wasn't damaged. There wasn't any cloudiness or a huge air bubble in there. There was no partial use, or it wasn't, a vial that somebody dropped and left on the side and I just picked it up and carried on with it. And I think that's instilled in me this onus of, if something was to go wrong with that bag and that patient later down the line and it was all to get investigated, it would come back to me and I would have to honestly say that I didn't check if I hadn't have checked. So I think it's really important to ensure that you check everything thoroughly before you bring the patient into the room even. And that will also help you to relax with regards to, that everything you've done leading up to the point of giving the local anesthetic is right. You've done it properly. You've done a thorough job. And so that it does just eliminate all the areas for the mistakes. So this sort of goes along with the setup. Make sure you feel ready to give the local anesthetic before you ever do so. The next thing I would say is talk to the patient. You may be nervous, and you may be so nervous that you forget to chat to the patient. You may be thinking in your head that this is the first time I've ever done it. I'm petrified of doing it. It's all going to go wrong, and it just won't. You've got to remember that there is a person at the end of that needle, and they are also nervous if you're nervous. And you need to just chat to them. You need to communicate with them. You need to talk them through the procedure. Tell them what you're going to do. Tell them how it's going to feel. When I think about it, I always remember my orthodontist before giving me an injection ever. She'd say to me, "You're just going to feel me pulling on your cheek." And I focused so much on the fact that she was pulling on my cheek that I never felt any local anesthetic ever go in. And it may be completely a complete psychological thing, but it really works. If you communicate with your patient and you talk them through, ask them to take deep breaths in and out through their nose. Tell them that you're going to ask them to wiggle their toes and what that's going to feel like. And tell them that it's going to be a sharp scratch, and tell them that it might take a few minutes. And if you talk them through things, it makes things so much better for yourself and for the patient. You mustn't freeze up, shut down, be so hyper-focused on giving local anesthetic that you just forget about everything else. And breathe. Now, it may be difficult to hear. I don't really know. Giving local anesthetic is obviously massively important, and it has to be done right. But it's not the most high risk thing you'll ever do in your life, ever. And it's really important to put it into context and think, okay, yes, it's scary. Yes, it's nerve wracking, but there are things that are more high risk than this. And I need to put it into context. I added this picture. Actually, I thought this was hilarious. I found 5 things wrong with this picture. And I wondered if anyone else has looked at it and thought the same things. Just quickly, I'll go through. So I think the patient's obviously not wearing eye protection. Neither is the operator. It looks as though this mask is halfway down. From what I can see, the operator is looking down here at the lower teeth while injecting into the upper teeth. She also has a finger rest on her mandible and appears to be injecting in the palate of the maxilla. And if the patient, for whatever reason, does this, then that needle's going to bend and it's going to be a horrible situation. So as I was looking for it, I saw that picture, and I think it's important to look at this stuff like that and think, actually, I can see loads of things wrong with that, and that's why I wouldn't do those things going forward. Okay. So these are sort of my tips, really, and this list is by no means extensive. Please don't feel as though if I've said it, you have to do it, and if it doesn't work for you because it was said on a webinar that you once watched that you must do it and stick with it until the end of time. And these are things that work for me, and there'll be so many more things that work for other people, but these are just the tips that I've learned. So it's your positioning. If you choose to sit or stand, that's up to you, and it'll be easier in certain areas of the mouth. Make sure that your chair is in the right place or you're stood in the right place, even if that means coming around, not sitting at 12 o'clock to the patient, but even sitting 8 or 9 o'clock to the patient, so you're really in the right position to give that local anesthetic. Going back to that picture, actually, if I was to use this as an example, the operator is sat at maybe 11 o'clock to the patient, but realistically being sat around this angle, following that line of that needle would be so much more helpful. So I think it's important to position yourself so that you're in the right place. If you're standing, make sure you've got a good solid base. Make sure your feet are solid on the ground. You're not stood on one foot, leaning over with your toe balancing like a ballet act, trying to really reach over somewhere else. Make sure if you can't get there, you've got to move. So make sure you're leaning against the chair. I often lean against the chair with my dominant leg so that I know I've got almost like a tripod base where my feet are on the ground and my body is leaned against something else, so that I know I'm not moving anyway. If you were to push me while I'm giving local anesthetic, I'm stuck where I am. Next thing is visualization. Make sure you can see. Don't let the patient or your assistant or the tutor dictate where you need to be. If you cannot see what you're doing, just don't do it. Now, that doesn't mean throw a hissy fit, walk off clinic, tell everybody where to go. It means saying and expressing to the person that you're with that you can't see what you're doing and you need to move to be able to see. Yes, they may not be able to see, and you also may need to come to an arrangement with everybody to make sure that everybody can see, because the tutor does need to see what you're doing, and so does the assistant oftentimes, and the patient needs to be comfortable. But don't account for all those things and don't account for all those things and make sure that you can't then see. If you can't see, don't do it. And also use your light. Your light is life. If you're not using your light properly in dentistry, you're just setting yourself up to make things so much more difficult. Posture. This is one of the tips I find most helpful. It's instinctive when we go to give LA that you see something over there, you take the needle in this hand and you bring your elbow right up here and you go to give it like that. This puts so much excess demand on your shoulder, and it just adds so many more muscles that need to be controlled while you're concentrating so heavily. It's just not worth it. Always try and bring that elbow down by your side. It just eliminates the need and the demand on your muscles, and it will definitely make your hands steady. Anyone who thinks they have steady hands, if you give them a local anesthetic needle and tell them to hold their arm out, you watch the end of it and the tip will move like that. So if you take out the need for your shoulder to work, your triceps, your lats, everything to work, and just bring that elbow by your side, lock it by your side. If you can't move and get to where you need to be with the elbow by your side, then just adjust where you are. Adjust the patient's head. Ask the patient to lean further back. Tilt the head either way. Make sure that you bring your elbow by your side to give the local anesthetic. Before injecting, think about retraction. So although retraction with a mirror is textbook, it isn't always the best thing to do. Mirrors slip, they move around. You don't have the same tactile proprioception at the end of a mirror as you do with your fingers. So if it's not appropriate for you and it's not easier for you, if it's easier for you to use your fingers, then use your fingers. You get a lot of stick for this, and I think people will also say, it's dangerous to use your fingers because you're at a risk of a needle stick injury. But my argument is you're at the risk of a needle stick injury anytime there's a needle around. And just because you're holding a mirror tip, yes, okay, it may be a smaller risk at the end if you're injecting near the tip of a mirror than near your fingers. But as dentists, we do have the manual dexterity to be able to watch and not stab ourselves in the fingers. So I think it's important that if you can, and it's easier for you to use your fingers, that you do so. The next is to use topical anesthetic. You'll get a lot of stick from experienced dentists to say, nobody's got time for topical anesthetic. Just get the local anesthetic in. It's not worth it, etc., etc. And I just don't agree with it. At this stage of dental school, when you're nervous about giving it, when we're worried about everything, it makes life so much easier for you and for the patient. There's no point. You don't get any prizes for finishing 2 minutes earlier. So just give the local anesthetic. It calms you down. It calms the patient down, and it makes everything easier. And distract. So if you're giving a local in the palette's notoriously painful. If you use the blunt end of the handle of the mirror and press in the palate, that distracts the patient. Same as I said earlier with if you're giving a buccal infiltration and you have to pull, and I'm not suggesting you tug on the cheek as you give the LA, but if you really retract the mucosa with purpose, it does distract the patient. And then lastly, I would say, now this is really important. So using a rest, this is advice I was given, and I found it really helpful. If you can retract with your fingers and you can use your thumb as a rest point, when you come in with your local anesthetic, if you come past the point of your thumb with your needle and use the barrel of the local anesthetic on your thumb, it makes things so much easier. Trying to do it from your elbow, even with your elbow locked at your side, you will still move quite considerably. If you can eliminate that by resting the barrel of the cartridge against your thumb when you're retracting, that'll make things a lot easier. And always inject bevel to bone. If you imagine the bone is like this and the bevel of the needle's here, if it was up, all that liquid is going to come out and it's going to flood the soft tissues and it's going to be uncomfortable. So if you inject bevel to bone, because that's where we want the local anesthetic to infiltrate. Aspirate. Always remember, if you're going to give, once you've inserted the needle, you've hit bone, you've retracted, just aspirate. Gently squeeze the tip of the syringe and watch for any blood that may fill the cartridge. If blood fills the cartridge, don't panic, just move, either take the needle out and retry or advance it further. However you do it, always aspirate. Now, this is another area of contention. The needle tip will move while you're giving your local anesthetic, and I would almost guarantee that nobody could ever manage to keep the needle tip exactly where they wanted it to be when they were given local anesthetic. At some point, you will realize that the needle tip has moved, and you'll think to yourself, should I re-aspirate? Should I check again? Should I just carry on going? And what you really need to do at that point is stop and re-aspirate just to make sure you're not in a vein. If you are, don't panic, just move. And just think to yourself, I could have given the rest of that cartridge into that vein, but I didn't because I always aspirated. And go slow. There's no benefit to just whacking it in and getting it done. It's more painful for the patient. If it's in the wrong place, you'll panic. Just go slow, discuss with the patient, talk the patient through, take nice deep breaths, and everything's much easier. So just remember your post-operative instructions. Tell the patient to avoid extreme hot things, take painkillers prophylactically, most of the time, and be wary of where they bite. Yeah, that's the end of it from my point of view. So thank you for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions. Sorry, I hope I didn't run over time.
No, you're absolutely fine. Let's just give it a few seconds for some questions to come through, because like I said, there's a bit of a delay from us going onto YouTube. I also wanted to say that we're obviously listening, and as you're talking in here, and we were loving your advice. And from a very personal element. I'm terrified of needles. So when you said that to talk to your patients as you're injecting, I absolutely love that, because like I said, I'm really terrified whenever I have somebody very chatty that's like talking to me while they're injecting. It makes it a million times easier, and you just don't even notice it happening. Like you said, like with the retracting the cheek thing. Yeah, I thought it was really nice advice. And from a patient point of view, love that too. So just wanted to say that. We do also have a couple of questions that have come through for you. So the first one asked, what do you mean about the bevel to the bone? I think I missed it.
Okay, so if you think about a syringe, you'll have different types of needle tips, and they could be so that they're like cylindrical, so the tip is just flat like that. What we use in dentistry is a beveled tip, which means that if you imagine this is my hand, my arm is the needle, and the tip of the needle has a bevel in it, which means the fluid will come out of one side rather than the other. So it will travel up here and it'll come out of this side rather than this is flat, just metal. If you place that towards bone, what will happen is the local anesthetic will come out of this side and it will go infiltrate into the bone. If you imagine my bevel was, well, I can't really do it the other way around. If you imagine this now is the bevel and this is the bone, if the fluid was to come out this way and go that way, away from bone, it fills the soft tissues and the area surrounding, which is uncomfortable for the patient. As you look at a needle, it will always have a small arrow on it to suggest where the bevel of the needle is. And if you can just orientate that so that the arrow is towards the bone side of the mucosa when you inject, that makes things easier for your patient.
Lovely. That's great advice. We've had another comment asking, you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but if there's anything else that you might like to add, how would you handle a patient that's scared of needles?
Yeah, great question. I think it's important to not hide the needle, but not make it as blatantly obvious as you can. So with a bracket tray, patients will walk past bracket trays and they look at everything on there, and they will, it doesn't matter what you say to a patient, if they're nervous and they see a needle, they will not concentrate on anything else you do. So just have the needle out of the way for the start. Use topical anesthetic and just explain to them that the topical anesthetic will make things a little bit more numb. You cannot let the patient's nerves influence your nerves. So just because a patient is nervous, that doesn't mean you should be more nervous. You really need to try and control your emotions with regards to, even though a patient is nervous, you still have to go through the motions. You can oftentimes practice the process in your head. So if you know that the patient is to your left and your needle is to your right-hand side, and the needle is covered before the patient enters the room, and if they're very nervous, you can ask them to lie down and explain to them that you're going to give the local anesthetic, but they don't need to see it, and they'll feel a sharp scratch. Take the needle when they're not looking. So make sure you've got retraction either with your fingers or with a mirror. The patient can be lying this way, looking elsewhere. Either ask your assistant or somebody else, or take the needle in your hand this way, and don't sort of bring it in front of the patient's face to show them. Tell them what you're going to do. Explain to them that you might give them the needle. Explain to them some of them may ask not to be told, but just explain to them that you're going to have to tell them that you'll give them the local anesthetic. Talk them through it. Make everything as calm and as just relaxed as possible. Open windows if they get stressed and they get really warm. Talk them through it. People are always going to be nervous, and there's no magic fix to making people not nervous. But communicating, as Becky said, somebody who communicates with you makes things so much easier when you have to have those procedures that you're scared of. So I would really say, try and avoid the patient seeing the needle as much as possible, obviously while avoiding needle stick injuries, and communicate with your patient. Just explain to them that things are a little bit uncomfortable and talk them through it as they do it. And people are often okay. I understand people will always be nervous, and that may not be the best advice. Actually, Ruby may be better at giving advice on this because she'll have done it a lot more times than me. But yeah, I don't really know.
Well, I think that sounds like a very calm injection situation. I'm going to be calling you up next time I need some LA. So watch out for that. We've had a couple more. One comment saying, thank you for the amazing presentation. I recently took the topic and this advice is really wonderful. Somebody else said, do you have any advice for doing LA on pediatric patients who are scared of needles?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's even more difficult on peds, I think. I think you really have to know. What I would suggest on peds is the preparation of what you're going to do really is solidified if you have a sort of routine. If you've practiced in your head how this is going to go, what you're going to say, you have a pattern, you have it down, and you know what you've really consolidated all your plans for how it's going to work. I think you make your life a lot easier for yourself. If you talk about putting the tooth to sleep, if you talk about putting the numbing jelly on, all that kind of stuff, you really, we call it childrenese. We're in dental school. I don't know if lots of people call it. It's this sort of the same, a roundabout way of saying things for children, and it's a way of talking to them in a way that makes sure that they understand what's going on, but not with the fine point of all the technicalities. So don't say, I'm just going to inject a needle into your gums, because they'll panic. So make sure you phrase things in the right way. You've got a systematic order planned in your head of how things are going to go. And it may not go that way, but at least you tried. And exactly the same thing again. So use your topical anesthetic. Talk things through. If it needs to have mum or dad holding a hand, nice deep breaths. And if the patient's that nervous, you can consider inhalation, sedation, and other methods. But I think the confidence you express, kids especially, will pick up if you're nervous. So if you really try and calm things down, then I think that'll help.
Lovely. I am just going to add in Ruby as well, see if she has anything that she might like to add on those points.
Hiya. Yeah, I think everything Pete's saying is exactly right. Talking through things with calm patients, making sure you're prepared. I guess the only thing that I would add is that sometimes I think, especially nervous patients, is they forget that a dentist is actually a person and we're not actually that bad. But if we keep feeding them the narrative that, we don't really say anything, all we ever do is put something sharp in your mouth, poke your gums, try and talk to you whilst you've got a drill in your mouth, then we're not really helping that image. I think just trying to be yourself, making a laugh and a joke, chatting to the patient and finding out what it is exactly that's making them anxious. And just trying to be a real person eases so much anxiety. I think that's my experience of it. But I think that's the only thing I could add, really.
Yeah, I agree. And my colleague here is also scared of needles. She's like nodding away behind the screen here. She's like, we do have one more question that's come in. If either of you would like to take this one. This one is, are there any tips for handling patients who tend to flinch when we inject? I'm scared that I'm going to hurt them even more.
Yeah, that's always petrifying, and it's really hard. The advice I would give you is to make sure that you're secure and talk to the patient. So ask the patient, try and set up a stop sign with the patient or stop signal. Tell the patient that if they feel pain, that they mustn't flinch, because there are additional risks associated with that. Tell the patient that they can raise a hand if they're in pain, or they can say ow without moving too much, and you will stop. Ensure that if you set up a stop signal with a patient and they ask you to stop, then you do have to stop. Because if you don't stop when a patient asks you to, that really breaks trust and sets yourself up for a real long-term sort of, you really have to build your rapport again. I would say the example I showed with the operator who had a finger on a mandible and she's injecting in the maxilla, really avoid stuff like that. Make sure that your hands are secure. If a patient jumps, oftentimes there's nothing you can really do about it. You can just try and preempt the jump and ask them to stop beforehand, or ask you to stop beforehand, and really make sure that you're in a secure position so that if the patient was to jump, your needle goes with them. And it's the same for any preparation you may ever do with a high-speed handpiece or anything like that. If your finger rests are in the right place and they're close to the area you're working in and they're secure, there shouldn't be huge amounts of movement between essentially what's the patient and what's you. You should move as one in theory, so you can accommodate that. I think also being aware of things all the way out while you're giving local anesthetics, so not just glaring at where your needle tip is and injecting here and then realizing 30 seconds later that nothing's come out, or the other way around, it just glaring at the end of your syringe, thinking, how much of this cartridge have I given? I'm sweating so much. And then you realize that it's moved. You have to be aware of so many things all the time and watch for signals from your patient. I think that's the best advice I can give. I don't know if Ruby can add anything to that.
I think that's very good advice, definitely. And I guess just from my side, sometimes patients will flinch and there's nothing you can do about it. I've had about 3 needle sticks from it. Sometimes it's nobody's fault. It's just one of those things. But I'm still here and keep going. I'm still resilient.
Lovely. We do have a couple more LA questions, but I'm just very conscious that our next speaker, Gada, is joining us from the United Arab Emirates, so it's very late there for her. So if it's okay with everybody, we can send out some answers to the next couple questions and leave it there for now with LA.
Yeah, great. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks Ruby as well for helping.
Thank you, Pete and Ruby, so much. That was very, very helpful advice. Okay, lovely. So like I mentioned, our next speaker is going to be Gada. And as we can see, I've forgotten to add the title of Gada's presentation there, which is great. So we're going to pretend that one is in there. Gada, as I mentioned, is joining us from the United Arab Emirates tonight. She is a student at the University of Sharjah. She's also a student council member, an Immersify ambassador, and she is an IPP for the UDSA and also a student advisor there. So very, very busy lady. So today, Gada is going to talk to you through everything that you need to know to kind of structure your time, structure your revision, minimize your stress, stay organized, and all of those kind of really practical revision tips. And she's also, I believe, going to introduce to you our planner that you will all be receiving a little bit later. So I'm going to let you take it from here, Gada.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Becky. So, hi, everyone. I'm Gada Jassim. I am an Immersify Premium Ambassador and a 4th-year dental student. I'm from Dubai, United Arab Emirates, and I currently study in the University of Sharjah. So, I'll be talking about 2 important concepts. Firstly, how to study smarter, not harder. And secondly, how to utilize revision techniques. And I'll also cover how to structure your time during exam periods to minimize stress and stay organized. Everything I'll mention today is based on research, so they're all evidence-based practices, which I personally tested out and found that they really work. So before we start anything, let me ask you, why are you here today? It's important to know what you want to gain from this discussion. Are you here because your current study plan or technique isn't working for you? Or you have a good study plan, but you're burnt out or you can't sustain it? Or you're just here to see me? And I don't think it's that one, but we'll see. So, how to study smarter, not harder. Before we start, this is a key concept that needs to be explained first. What do we mean by studying smarter and what do we mean by studying harder? Studying smart essentially means learning how to learn. So learning with a plan or a proper strategy. If you study smart, you study with greater efficiency, less time, less chance of burnt out, you retain information for longer. Whereas if you study harder, it's the opposite. Results can turn out to be similar, but the processes are entirely different, especially if we're talking about the longevity of retaining information and sustainability, which is for you to be able to sustain that studying technique or strategy. This formula I'm about to show you now explains this entire concept. So if there's a part you should be deeply focusing on, it's now. And write this down if you have to. This formula is from a book called 10 Steps to Earning Awesome Grades While Studying Less by Thomas Frank. I added the QR code if you guys want to check the book out. This formula shows that class time, learning quality, study time, and study efficiency, these 4 factors together contribute to something called desired preparedness. Desired preparedness is the level of preparation you want to achieve, or your academic goal, basically. So with these 4 factors, if class time is fixed, that leaves us with the 3 other factors and the one that we can directly control, which is study time. So with the power of algebra, you can see in the second formula, we solve for study time, and we see that if you want to decrease study time, you need to increase both learning quality and studying efficiency. Okay, first question. Why do we decrease study time? Shouldn't we study more? Wrong. To improve your grades, you can either spend more time studying or you can learn to study smart. That is basically the summary and key value of this presentation. The answer is to study smart and decrease study time. Why? Because 1, time is limited before exams. 2, the brain has a limited focus capacity, meaning if you spend too much time studying, it can actually hinder your progress and instead make you more tired. And this is the concept of studying the hard way. The important thing is how you use your study time, not how long you study. Long study sessions lead to a lack of concentration and thus a lack of retention. And when studying smarter, not harder, this is an important aspect. Does that mean we shouldn't study? No, that doesn't make sense. This is what I mean. So as you can see here, we have 2 schedules, okay? The one here on the right is after decreasing study time. But how? Well, if you see, it's the same number of study hours for each subject, but spaced out in a week instead of one day. Why is that? Studying multiple subjects each day rather than focusing on just one subject is more effective to help you stay focused. Because if you study the same subject for too long, you'll start to mix up the information. So for example, in pharmacology, you study different drugs, indications, and side effects. So for example, if you study pharmacology for 3 hours straight, what you learned in the first hour will be mixed with what you learned in the third hour or in the second hour. So the drugs, the side effects, indications, all will be mixed up. So instead of learning all of that in one sitting, you can space it out to 3 study sessions. So as you can see on the right, you'll still be studying 3 hours of pharmacology. Just instead of 3 hours per day, it's 3 hours per week. Technically, you reduce the amount of study time per day, but your study efficiency has increased and you didn't compromise your overall study time, if that makes sense. So in doing so, your brain will have more time to consolidate your learning. So we already went through how to decrease study time. We'll discuss now how to increase studying efficiency. So studying efficiency depends on 3 things: your body, which is your health, your environment, and your studying technique. For your body, it's easy to only think about your mental health when focusing on study habits, but studying without caring for your physical health will only wear you down. You can't study as smart as you want when your body is not ready for it. So exercising, drinking water, eating healthy, and sleeping well. These increase concentration, improve memory, reduce stress, and they just boost your overall mental processing power. Your brain is a machine, and it needs fuel and proper care. You can't expect to increase your studying efficiency or get better grades if you don't take proper care of yourself. And that's a given. Then for the environment, which is the place and the time that suit you. Everyone is different. You need to know whether you prefer having background noise or music or complete silence, whether it's a classroom with people or a quiet library or just you alone in your room. Knowing what kind of place makes you feel comfortable and productive is key. That said, you should also know what is your most productive time. Different timing also works for different people. It depends on when do you feel the most wide awake? When do you feel it's easier to concentrate? And can you stick to that timing? Good timing doesn't help without consistency. Then for technique or the studying technique, studying is a broad term, so it's an umbrella term. There's so many things that goes under that. There's note-taking, summarization, memory and retention, revision, test-taking, etc. So many things fall under that category, and there's so many techniques. But I'll just dive into our main topic, which is Revision 101. So what is revision? Revision is going over the information you already learned. I'll repeat that. Going over the information you already learned. Revision is different from pre-studying or pre-revision. So learning information for the first time, reading, writing notes, and familiarizing yourself with the topic, that all happens in the pre-revision stage. After that comes revision. And the goal of revision is to focus on long-term retention. So periodic review or revision means reviewing the information periodically. It's essential for long-term retention and improving grades. Now, as you can see here, these are what I like to call the rules of revision. They're not set in stone rules, they're just what I like to follow. So first of all, no new information. So don't attempt to learn new information for the first time when revising. Instead, learn the same information, but in a variety of ways, and use different learning resources. Then use engaging or active ways to engage with the topic, such as active recall and active reading, and schedule periodic review sessions. And lastly, the golden rule, which is leave 24 hours before your exam for pure revision. I'll be going through each and every one of them now so you can get a clearer idea. So first of all, learn the same information in a variety of ways. So research proves that different media stimulates different parts of the brain. So the more areas of the brain that are activated, it's more likely that you'll understand and retain the information. So to learn a specific topic, you should do the following. You could read the textbook, watch a video, listen to class recordings, or make a mind map. And by doing that, you'll stimulate different parts of your brain. Of course, you won't be able to do all of these things in one sitting, but each time you review the topic, you use a different resource or method. And trust me, you'll learn way faster this way. And we all know the best resource for doing that is, needless to say, Immersify. They have a wide range of topics with different resources, whether it's multiple choice questions, animations, notes, games, experiences. They're perfect for revision. So if you're a dental student and you're not familiar with Immersify, you should be. You definitely should be at this point. Then we have active recall and active reading. So think of reading as an important part of pre-studying, okay? But revision requires something called active reading, which means actively engaging in the material. Active studying does not mean highlighting or rereading or just memorization. You need to actively engage in the topic. So turn the words that you read on paper and link them together in your own mental mind map, if that makes sense. For example, how would I explain this? So, for example, if you're reading a newspaper passively, it is entirely different than actively reading your notes or your study material, and that's what you want to do. You need to actively engage in the topic by reading out loud or asking yourself questions while you're revising, or testing yourself by answering questions, which brings us to active recall. So, active recall or self-testing is crucial if you want to improve your academic performance. So put down those revision cards and study notes once you've learned them. There's no point in going over something a million times. You need to be able to apply it. If you can find past papers, then that's great. With each one, you can go over the question scheme or format and ensure you understand everything there. This gives you a better idea of how to think through an exam question. Then we have spaced repetition. So spaced repetition or scheduling periodic review sessions. It's a learning technique that encourages you to study more the things that you're bad at and study less the things that you're good at, also known as distributed practice. You can plan your review sessions, so you review a specific subject every 3 days and later every week, then every 2 weeks. How often you want to repeat it depends on you. So many people online will recommend different schedule plans, but for each person it's different. It depends on how dense the material is, how fast you learn, and your memory. There are also many applications that use the concept of spaced repetition, and they do this schedule for you, such as Anki. We all know Anki. It's a flashcards app. They do this for you, and they allow you to review your flashcards periodically. Lastly, when you revise or do your study plan, you need to make your deadlines. Again, it's not set in stone, so it depends on you. But generally, these are the rules that I follow. So 1 week before the exam, on this day, you should be done going through all the material, done doing your notes, done doing your summary. So at this point, you should be in the revision stage. This is your deadline. Then 2 to 3 days before the exam, you'd have like a mock exam where you imagine this is the test day and you start quizzing yourself. Then, and this is the most important one, and this should be engraved in all of your study plans, which is leave 24 hours before your exam for pure revision. So you don't memorize anything at this point. You just revise. You go over the same information, but through different resources. As I said, these deadlines are not set in stone. Okay, it could make total sense for some people, and it could mean like total nonsense for others. It depends on you, depends on your study material and your subject. Some people can do it a month before an exam and then like 2 weeks before and like so on and so forth. There's no right or wrong, but like you get the concept, I hope. So the summary of what we discussed today, we said studying smarter means increasing studying efficiency and decreasing study time, while studying harder means the opposite. We said studying efficiency depends on you, your body and your health, as well as your environment and studying technique. Then we went over some revision techniques, and I gave you some tips on how to structure your time during exam periods. And yeah, that's all, folks. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned some things, and I hope you try them out and see what works for you. I wish you all the best in your studying journey. Here are my socials if you want to ask me any questions or anything or catch up. And yeah, that's it. We're done.
That was amazing advice. Thank you so much, Gada. We've been getting a few comments coming through saying that they were really liking the advice that you were giving. And we have had actually just one question come through for you as well. So somebody has asked, did you ever have bad study habits that made you feel productive even if you weren't being productive? So they weren't very effective. So for instance, passively writing notes. And if you did, how did you break these habits?
Yeah, definitely. I had so many bad habits. Like when I first started university, especially because transitioning from like high school to university is an entirely different experience. So what I used to like do mostly during high school, which is like casually sit, write notes, and then like revise later on. I wouldn't have like a proper schedule. I even wouldn't know the proper way to write notes. I just write whatever I'd hear, like everything word by word, whatever I hear, I just like write it down. And that was not efficient. It wasted so much time. And once I came to university, I realized, no, I need to find better ways to do this. I need to find better ways to do that. So searching online, reading books, asking other students. And I found there's actually so many techniques, so many ways to like properly study and properly know what you're doing, whether it's with note taking, whether it's doing your own schedule or anything in that matter.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. Like it's so important to not just get stuck in those habits that you have already and really research and see what works well and then try things, see what works well for you. I think it's very good advice. Thank you, Gada. We have just had a few more comments saying thank you and they really enjoyed the tips. Somebody asked, do you write or type your notes?
I like to write on the iPad. So I actually read this online. It said that actually when you write things down, whether it's on paper or on your iPad, you actually train your brain to actually learn better and understand the things that you're writing down more than just like typing word by word, because you're just like typing on different keys. You're not really writing down the letters and like understanding the information correctly. So I definitely recommend writing it down, whether it's on iPad or like on paper.
Yeah. Lovely. And then somebody has asked two questions actually. How can you retain information better? And do you have any tips for last minute revision?
Okay, so how to retain information better. This is basically under memorization or under long-term memory. So you can retain things better with memorizing with short-term information. So you just like memorize the thing for like a short period of time. Whereas long-term retention depends on revision. So the rules of revision that I said, which is completely studying the same amount of information, just repeating it in different with different resources, and to focus on understanding the concept, not just knowing it word by word, not just like memorizing word by word. It's more like applying the concept. So understanding it and applying it through active recall, so answering questions, and to train your brain to adapt or absorb that information better.
Lovely. Sorry, I'm just reading through these. We've had one more comment from actually another one of our Immersify ambassadors, Mai. So hi, Mai. I'm going to shout out to you. And Mai has asked, how do you balance your work with organizations and your studies?
I get this question a lot, actually. When I first started out, I was really excited. I love working in different organizations. I love planning. I love management. It's something that I'm really passionate about, but I didn't know if I could like actually balance that out with my studies. And at the start, I couldn't. To be very honest with you guys, I could not balance it out at the start. But then you start learning about your priorities. And once you do something for like a long period of time, it just becomes natural, it becomes like a routine. So it wouldn't take that much time. I'd like have meetings and I'd like finish my work. And at the same time, I'd have like adequate amount of time to study. And if you put your priorities straight and you know which one is like priority number 1, priority number 2, priority number 3, and you list it out and actually write it down. So whenever you plan anything, it's best that you write it down and you see it in front of you. So when you plan it out, you know what to do, when to do it. And that just like makes everything flow easily.
Lovely, that's really nice advice. I have just seen that Pete would love to add something, if that's okay with you, Gada, if we add him in.
Yes, sure.
Great. There you go.
Amazing. Thanks, Garda. That was such awesome advice. I just wanted to add the point on, you said you write on your iPad. I do the exact same thing, and I was really struggling because I found it quite difficult to write on the iPad. So I just wanted to bring out, and I'm not plugging any, I don't know what products, but you can get paper-like screen protectors for iPads, and they just help with writing things down. So we also have a lot of our lectures online, and it's really good to write things down and annotate your lectures. I think it can be sometimes the platforms and the equipment is not conducive to doing so, but bringing in adding a paper like screen protector to my iPad makes things a lot easier for me. So I just find that for anyone who finds it difficult to write on the iPad, that does help.
I never tried that out, but that seems really good. I should really try it out.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like a very good point. Also, Ruby would love to add something to the conversation, so I'm just going to add her back in. Here we go. Hi again, Ruby.
Thanks, Garda. That was such a good presentation. I feel like I've learned something about my study skills as well from that, so thank you very much. But I just wanted to add something in, just about time spent studying, and everything you're saying sounds amazing. But what I wanted to say is that if you don't feel like you can do 3 hours a night, or you feel like you can't study as much as your friends, then that's okay. And I get this a lot from students. I think there's a lot of comparison goes on, or so-and-so's doing this much work, so-and-so's done those many things. But everybody's different, and and as you alluded to, it's so important to make time for other things as well, and try not to let it take over, because I often find usually our most studious students, the ones that work really, really hard, then they end up getting the most stressed because they're so worried about the fact that they haven't done enough work. So yeah, 100% agreed with everything you say, and I think you've got some really, really good tips there. But don't forget to look after yourself and give yourself some, for everyone to give yourself some time and some space away from work as well. But yeah, that's fab. Thanks. That's all I wanted to say.
That's really lovely advice, Ruby. And I think definitely, I know, like when I was in university, I think we've all been there. It can be really easy to get sucked up into that. Oh, this person's doing this and this person's doing this and I'm not doing enough. And that kind of spiral of almost self-shaming. So I think it's a really nice point to kind of add in there. We've had one more question. Let's maybe make this the last one. If anybody else does have any other questions, again, we'll get to them in the email later. But we have had one person ask for Pete and Ruby, but I guess anybody really could answer this. How did you study in dental school? Like, did you have any particular note-taking techniques or anything like that?
Do you want to go first, Pete? Or?
I would probably defer to Ruby and to Garda. I'm particularly bad at studying. I'm pretty old school. I try my best and it doesn't work. So actually listen to what Garda said has been massively helpful for me. So I won't give my advice. I'll let it.
So my way of studying, or the thing that I find most helpful is, so I like to learn by doing something, or actually understanding and being involved in something, like Garda was saying. So I tend to find that the more I can engage and the more I can give to the time I'm actually in dental school, so trying to get the most out of every single session. So during clinical sessions, asking supervisors questions, really trying to get the most out of each session, and each patient kind of experience really then helps me to learn the content. But everybody's got their own different ways. But I'd say for me, that's the most effective way of learning stuff.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of that just came to me then is I find teaching things actually really helpful for consolidating knowledge. So if you get to the point where you understand something well enough to be able to teach it to somebody else, it really reaffirms things in your mind and helps you just regurgitate that knowledge later down the line when you need it.
Lovely. Great. Well, thank you all so much for that. I will relieve you of your speaking duties. And I'm going to show you all some of the Immersify platform. It's going to fit in very nicely with a lot of the things that we've been talking about here. So what I want to talk to you all a little bit about is kind of how Immersify can fit into your revision plan. I think it can be really, really scary introducing a new resource into your routine, and kind of, you know, when you've done something for so long, it can be really daunting to try something new. And I know kind of exam period in itself is daunting enough. We don't really need to be adding to that. So I want to show you a little bit about kind of some of the different ways you can use Immersify, how that can fit into your routine, and kind of just almost clear up a little bit of that like confusion that there can just be when it's a new platform. You don't know what there is, how to use it. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have already used Immersify, but for those of you who haven't, it'll just be a little whistle stop tour of what we have and how you can fit it into your routine. So I'm going to first start off talking to you about search. So something that we see a lot is that sometimes people will open up a new platform like ours. They'll see this big list, like you can see in front of you, like our Explore page in the middle, and they think, oh gosh, I'm really not sure where to start. I don't know what to do with this. They panic and they leave. So one really big piece of advice that we really love to give when people are using Immersify for the first time is just to search, have a look around, of course, see what's in there. But we find it's really helpful if you just, I mean, it sounds silly, but sometimes when you're overwhelmed, you're not thinking straight, just using that search bar. And if you're looking for LA content, searching local anesthetic. If you're looking for anatomy content, search anatomy. And it's going to really help you kind of sort through that content and find something that is what you need, and really reduce that kind of daunting element that there can be when you're starting. And then throughout the year, if you're looking to fit in some extra study sessions, you want to just kind of see what's there, then the Explore page is going to be your best friend. You can kind of just have a look around then, but kind of when you're in that state of mind where you're looking for something specific, of course, go for it. Use the search bar. And then as you can see on this screen here, we have on the left, this is kind of almost like our home page. So you can see some of the experiences that you've recently used, explore the topics. In the middle, you can explore through all of the different content that we have on the platform. So there's all of our lessons, our MCQs, our VMCQs, our experiences, things like that. And then on the right one, you can also see some of the little like, the word's evading me now, some of the filters that you can use to kind of sort through that content. So maybe you don't have a specific topic in mind today, but you know you really feel like practicing with some MCQs. So you can go in there, search by MCQs, see what takes your fancy, and go from there. And then I'm going to talk to you about our lessons. Again, I do just want to mention that there are links to the Immersify platform, both on web and on app, in the description box below, and we have them pinned in the comments section that will be on your right-hand side of your screen. So with our lessons, like I mentioned earlier, everything is expert written, is quality assured. You know you're getting that reliable content, and it's really clear and to the point. One thing that we never want to do is overwhelm you with tons of information that you have to read 3 paragraphs to find one point. Sometimes that kind of really chunky, information-heavy content can work, but sometimes you need to just get to the point, and that's what we specialize in here. So all our lessons are packed full of content. There is, we're not missing out things that are vital. Everything that you need is in there, but we also do our best to make it as concise as possible. I know those two things kind of sound like they're contradicting each other, but if you give it a go, you're going to see what I mean, I promise. And then our lessons are also equipped with end of lesson quizzes. I think something that we've touched on today is how difficult it can be sometimes to retain information. Maybe if you are being a little bit too, not being too passive, but like if you're studying more passively, you might not always even realize that that's what you're doing. So our end of lesson quizzes are really useful you can go through the quiz, go through all the content, and then you get to the end and you can use the quiz to almost test yourself, see how much of it you retained, see how much of it you understood. And then if you see that you're maybe not getting a very good score on the end of lesson quiz, that's a lesson that you need to review again. So yeah, the lessons are really perfect for those kind of topics that you don't really feel comfortable in, or maybe you're not sure how comfortable you are. Like maybe you remember you felt good in the lesson, like when you did it in class, but you're not entirely sure how well you remember it. They're perfect to just kind of go through those and then do the end of lesson quizzes. You might be able to see a little bit from the screenshots here, but if not, again, you can go to the platform itself and give it a more of a look. So there's things in there like we have 3D models. So the two on the left and the right, the laptops, are 3D models where you can kind of like zoom in, you can expand them, spin them around, all that kind of stuff that really helps you interact with those models and really get a feeling for, like, really understand them as well as possible. And that screen in the middle on this picture is an example of one of our end of lesson quizzes. And I should mention that all of our content is available in our app, and also there is content available on web, but if you're looking to get everything in one go, that's in the app. So next I'll talk to you a little bit about our MCQs, our VMCQs, our flashcards, and our end of lesson quizzes. Actually, our flashcards have gone offline momentarily. At the moment, they're just having a little bit of a facelift, and they're going to be back very soon. So if you search that in there, they're not going to pop up right now, but keep an eye out for those. Yeah, so our kind of MCQs, the VMCQs, and the end of lesson quizzes are really, really good for being able to quiz yourself on content, again, that you're not quite sure how well you remember. Maybe you feel really confident with it, but you just want to be sure before the exam, so you want to just kind of practice, things like that. And because there's such a wide range of these, there's something for whatever you feel like. Like if you are a visual learner, then the VMCQs are going to be really good. If you feel like you can give or take the visuals, then maybe you can lean more to the MCQs, things like that. Again, there's just that really wide kind of variety there to really help you find what you need. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our experiences. These are very much the fan favorite. When we talk Immersify, these are the things everybody wants to talk about. These are the things everybody wants to hear about. And I won't lie, they're my favorite to talk about too. So this is the fun bit. So we have 3 experiences on the screen here. On the left, you can see our LA experience that I mentioned a little bit earlier, the one that we created in collaboration with SEPTODONT. And how our LA experience works is you are kind of walked through that process of administering LA, but within the Immersify platform. So you start with a brief, you're told things like any health complications, which tooth are you treating, what are you doing, things like that, to help you make those decisions, such as what type of anesthetic do I want to use? Do I want to use adrenaline? What type of needle do I want to use? How am I going to inject? Things like that. You're going to select all of those, and then you come through to the screen that you can see here. And what that is, sorry, this is a little bit small on my screen. Yeah, so you can see there's like almost like a joystick on the screen that you can move. That's going to move the needle around the mouth so you can get that perfect angle, that perfect positioning. When you're ready, you hit inject, another injection after that if you want or not. And then you get a score at the end, and it'll tell you how good were your decisions. For instance, should you have chosen a long needle and you chose a short one, things like that. And then it will give you scores on your accuracy as well. And then in the middle, you can see our anatomy experience. In this one, you have, as you can see, we use augmented reality. A lot of our experiences use, and some of our MCQs as well, and VMCQs use augmented reality to kind of give you that experience of being immersed in the content, of really being able to get like that really detailed view of the content, really. So in this case, with the anatomy experience, what you're doing is you're selecting on the screen. As you move your head, the skull is going to move with your head, and you're going to click on the screen where the origin points of muscles are and where the insertion points are. And then, as you can see, it's going to flash up and tell you whether you've got them right or wrong. And then on the right, you can see our BP experience. In this one, you can conduct a basic periodontal exam in the platform. So you kind of watch as the instrument measures the depth of the pockets, and then you're going to, as you can see, give it a score, and it's going to tell you whether your scores are right. You can watch out for things like bleeding and all those kind of things to help you with your scoring. So we feel that our experiences are something that are really like a really central part of the Immersify experience, for want of a better word. They're something that are like, it's really core to what we do, and that kind of bringing content to life element. They're fun because they're interactive, and on those days when you just you're maybe really not feeling like reading through a lesson, or you don't feel like being quizzed, they're the perfect thing to just kind of practice a little bit more without feeling as like you're studying as much, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm not wording that very well, so I'm hoping you're understanding what I mean there. So yeah, perfect for the days when you're feeling less motivated, because they have that little bit more like gamification element, and they're a little bit more fun. Yeah. And then next, I'm going to show you some of our perio content, which is going to be very fun. So I'm going to, like I mentioned, our perio content, well, we have perio content in the platform, our perio 1 topic that I'll speak to you about in a moment. What I'm going to introduce to you guys today is a little bit of our perio 2 content that we'll be launching next week. So our perio 2 topic will feature things such as causes, clinical features, and diagnosis of periodontal diseases. It will feature 4 different lessons, and we will soon also be adding a VMCQ into that as well that will cover those same lessons. So the lessons will be an introduction, I'm now realizing I don't know how to say that word, etiology. I'm sure you guys know how to say that better than I do. Diagnosis and monitoring, and clinical features of periodontitis, things like that. And like I mentioned, this joins our much loved Perio 1 topic. So Perio 1 covered things like periodontal screening. Our Perio 1 topic has 3 lessons in it, which are periodontal instruments, screening and processes, and screening anatomy. We have also 2 experiences in there, the anatomy related to the BP spotter, and perio screening, which is the one that you saw a couple slides ago and used to be called BP Easy. So some of you might know it as that. And now we're going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek of some of the assets from our Perio 2 topic. Since the video wasn't working earlier, I'm going to share the video straight to my screen if I can. So you'll have to give me 1 second. Okay. Apparently it doesn't want to play ball, so we can add that again into the email a little bit later on for you. Because as you can see here, that's not playing ball. So, like I mentioned, our Perio 2 content is going to be live week commencing 28th. So that's going to be the next week. You keep an eye out on our social media. We will be sharing a more specific release date a little bit closer to the time. We like to keep you on your toes. So yeah, like I mentioned in our previous perio content, we really focused on screening, and now we're expanding that into allowing you to have that fuller understanding of perio with things like causes, progression of disease, staging, grading of the disease. So things like the extent, the severity, and the speed of progression. And then after our Perio 2 content, a little bit later on, next year now, we will be introducing Perio 3, which will be the the non-surgical treatment of perio diseases. And then after that, we will also be introducing surgical treatments in there as well with Perio 4. So keep an eye out on the platform if there are things that you're interested in too. And that leads me to your CPD certificates and your revision planners. In fact, before I move on to those too much, I'm just going to double check the comments and see if there's anything that I need to touch on there. No, that looks good to me. Again, if you do have any questions, drop us a message on social media, comment on this later. We'll be monitoring those too, so no kind of worries if you think of something later. So for these CPD certificates and your planners, if you keep an eye on your emails over the next couple of days, we will be emailing those out to you. You'll receive your certificates with your names on, everything like that. And you will receive your exclusive Immersify X for all things dentistry planners, which you can see on the screen now. And we will also be sending you all an exclusive discount for Immersify Premium. So as you guys have seen, we have a whole really wide range of content on the Immersify platform. The Immersify platform is free for you to access. You can go on immersifyplatform.com, see things there for free, and also you can download the app, access all of that. But we do also have some premium content that is available via our subscription, the Immersify Premium subscription, which is what we will be sending you a discount for too. If you want to give it a try, you're not quite ready to pay yet, we do also have a 14-day free trial, so you can go ahead, give it a try, fall in love with it, of course. I'm sure you're all going to absolutely love it, and then stay. But it's that kind of like non-commitment. You can give the trial a go, see how it feels. Like I said, fall in love, and then make your decision. And I think that that's everything from me today. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you to SEPTODONT for sponsoring the video. And again, I'm going to just stay a couple more minutes. So if you have any comments or anything to add, I'll just give a couple of minutes for those. It's always awkward, isn't it, when you're like, I'll wait a couple of minutes for some comments, and then you're like, So we're waiting. Yes, you can rewatch the recording in your own time. The link that you have all used to join, where you're viewing right now, you can reuse that same link. It's going to be here forever now, forever and ever and ever. Or if you kind of lose the link, you can always just go to our YouTube channel. If you search for Immersify, then we're going to come up there. You can go through the previous videos and you'll find it there. Just give it a second for any more questions. You can also see on the screen our social media handles, and once again, the links to the Immersify platform, access via the app or via the web, are in the description box below. I'm going to leave it there. Like I said, drop us any messages on social media in the comment section later on if you have any more questions. And for now, that's all from us. Thank you so much, and have a lovely evening or a lovely day wherever you all are.